In this video, we're going to take a look at a beast of a light. It's going to be exciting. It's going to light up the streets, fields, farms, trails. You got to be careful with this thing. It'll burn through everything. And dig down deep into it to see how it works. It's got a lot of different modes, and I'll go over those too. Now let's get into the introduction. We'll do some pros and cons, a detailed review, a comparison, and then we'll conclude. There'll be some extras on the end, so stay tuned for those if you want to check them out as well. The X7R Marauder is the most powerful palm-sized light that you can find. That includes a USB-C charge port that takes 2.78 amps, has safety features such as a proximity sensor and temperature regulation that keeps it at 50 degrees Celsius or 122 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's easy to carry with its included holster. It's like having the power of the sun in your hand. Great for nighttime walks and when you cross the street, or it can light up the entire backyard, even half of the farm. You can light up any dark trail like it's daytime.
Here we are at the park. You want to keep an eye on that bridge. So when we come back here at nighttime, you'll see how well the peripheral light works, and then you'll see how the spot works and see how well they light up that bridge. 12,000 lumens. Crazy. It basically blinds you with all that light. It's daytime. It's not much of a thrower, but because of that massive amount of light, you can light up that bridge. You can see it no problem if someone's coming over it. It's got a very wide field angle, as you can see. Like, this is using the peripheral light, and you can almost light up the bridge like that. Just look at how much light is getting thrown off to the side.
You can light up an entire field and even the buildings across it. It's rated for 12,000 lumens, but I think it's throwing over 17,000 lumens initially out there. That's how it lights up the entire field. Comes with built-in high-quality Samsung cells capable of pushing out 15 amps continuous each, so that's like 222 watts. And it also comes with a USB-C cable and a wall charger that can put out 4 amps at 5 volts. Other flashlights out there, you have to unscrew them and take out the 4 batteries to charge it. That's very annoying, and I think they've done us right by putting a USB-C charger on there. So if you're a serious hiker or you need a good flashlight for work that's built rugged inside and out, built to survive drops from like a meter. In the last year I've dropped it accidentally a couple times, and it's been dented, but it's survived every fall and it's still working like the day I bought it. They have a 5-year warranty on it, and they've built it to last. The price of $279 might put you off, but if you compare it to the other lights at 1.6 cents per lumen, it doesn't actually seem that bad. The other lights don't even come with batteries, holster, chargers, and once you buy the batteries and holster and charger for the other lights, I think they're going to cost a lot more. Their prices are going to go up, and that'll make this an even better deal. So here's a quick list of pros and cons why I think this is a great light and what I think they can improve. In comparison to all the other lights, it puts out a lot of lumens. It's like 4 times brighter than all my other high-powered lights. And you can just see from the beam shots that this thing is insane. It's like having daylight in your hand. It comes with a premium price of $279, but I think that's actually pretty fair considering how high quality it is. I've taken it apart, and it's got a great reflector, nice anti-reflective coating on the thick glass lens. It's got that proximity sensor, a nice charge port. It even has this thick piece of metal in the back to act as structural support. If you drop it, the batteries may smash into it, and that just keeps everything solid. They put a lot of engineering into this, and cheaper lights are not going to have this. When you drop the cheaper lights, they're going to break, the boards are going to crack, and it's just going to stop working. The cheaper lights also use a natural rubber seal at the front. This one uses a nice thick silicone seal, so you can be certain that its water resistance is maintained. It's IPX7, which means you can put it underwater for 30 minutes up to a meter. They put nice high quality Samsung cells in there. They're INR, which are good for high current. And they're rated at 3000 milliamp hours, so it has pretty good runtimes. Along with the high output, it has a very low moonlight mode, which is about 15 lumens, and you can use that to read a book while you're camping, or if the power goes out, you can use it for many days. The holster is very sturdy, and it's lasted for the last year that I've been putting it on my belt. The cheaper lights come with a weak holster. It won't be as sturdy and won't hold your flashlight very well. So Olight has given us pretty good bang for our buck. Although it's the size of a pop can, it's about double the weight of a pop can, so it is pretty heavy. It's very dense, and it's because there's a lot of metal and parts in there. They've crammed a lot of stuff in there. So if you're okay carrying around a pop can that's double the weight, then this will be alright. So it's got an integrated battery like all our cell phones. Can't really service the battery anymore. But if you do have specialized tools, you can open it up and replace the battery no problem. In fact, I used an iPhone pentalobe screwdriver to open this up. You just gotta jam it into those little set screws, unscrew them, take the lid off, and then you've got access to the USB port cover, which is made of all metal. This is high quality stuff. It'll never break. The user interface is pretty good. I'll go over that in detail later and show you how it works, but I just wanted to let you know that if you go to turbo, it always defaults out into low. The reason I don't like that is because if I'm walking down the street in medium, and then I go through a crosswalk and I kick it up to turbo, when I click that button again, obviously you want it to go back into medium, but it's dropping into low every time. So it's an extra click to go back to medium. So the funny thing is that in strobe, it'll go back into the mode you were in, but they forgot to add that feature for turbo. It has lockout, but you just hold the button for 3 seconds. But I think if you crush the flashlight in a bag, holding it down for 3 seconds can take it out of lock pretty easily, and that will happen. They should have used something like double click and hold, or like the Sofran lights where you quadruple click, because those things will never happen inside a bag, or it would be very rare that it would happen. And since it's such a powerful light with a wide distribution, it can light up your work area very nicely, and it can act as an RAL, or a remote area light. You can put it up on a nice high tripod, direct it into your working space, and use it as a 6-hour long light. Rather than buying an expensive RAL, you can easily use this, but they didn't add a tripod mount, so you have to make one yourself. Hopefully when they make a new light, they'll address all these concerns. But despite all those cons, I think this is one of the best high quality, high output, feature rich lights that you can get. Now we'll take a closer look at the details and then compare it to some of my other lights. Olight rates it as a 12,000 lumen flashlight, but using my light meter, I tested it and it gets about 17,588 lumens right when you turn it on. But as you can see, it drops quickly, and if you average the first 3 minutes, then you do get about 12,000 lumens. So they probably averaged that and provide the conservative 12,000 lumen rating because they don't want to exaggerate their figures. They want to provide you with a reasonable rating. So if other manufacturers are saying they put out more, but you can only achieve that for a split second using high drain batteries, then that's not very representative. It's like the new Supra being completely underrated, and then the customers get it and realize it's way higher horsepower than it actually is. So that's kind of like what they did with this flashlight. It's rated pretty low, but it actually performs very well. The great performance is in part due to the Samsung INR batteries. This thing is not a thrower, but with the high output, it definitely can penetrate the distance and get way out there. Like you can see buildings or the farm or the Canada flag way up there, no problem with this light, even though it's not a thrower. It has a huge beam, very wide beam, so it's more like a huge searchlight or area light, which is why it would have been great if they had that tripod mount, working on your car brakes or changing a tire or whatever. It has some pretty good modes. I like the user interface. It has moonlight all the way to Turbo S. So the modes in this thing are pretty good. I think they programmed it pretty well because double click gives you turbo, and then double click that again gives you Turbo S. Turbo S obviously is blinding and fills up the entire camera, so you can't use it very often, but there's going to be some instances where you want to use Turbo S. So if you've got to see really far away and turbo isn't good enough, you just kick it up another notch. For any of the memory modes, you can easily get to moonlight mode, and then if you turn it off, it'll always come back onto moonlight mode. So it's pretty simple in that way. So if you want to go up to the low, medium, or high, you just hold it, and you can hold it down all the way and it'll just keep cycling between low, medium, and high, or you can click it and jump up to high, and then anytime you turn it off, it'll go back onto high. So any of those modes will be memorized, and you can get back to whatever mode you want. So if you're reading a book or something, you'll want to leave it on moonlight mode. There's only one way to get to moonlight mode, well, 2 ways, and that's to hold the button from lockout or from off. And then once you have it in moonlight mode, it can't even really blind you. It's good for reading books, and that's about it. So if you go camping with this thing, it's perfect. You can read anything with it. You just gotta really learn how to use the flashlight, because if you accidentally double click it in your tent, you're gonna blind yourself. So this is still a very dangerous light, but it can be safe if you know how to properly always go to moonlight mode. But don't accidentally go, oh, and double click it. So be careful for that. So one thing to note is that when you go to turbo or Turbo S, if you hold it, it always goes back to low. There's no way to go back to medium or high. It would have been nice if they memorized whether you were in medium or high. So let's say you're in high, you go to turbo for a second, and then you hold it to go back, but it goes straight back to low, which is a little bit too bad because they should have memorized medium and high. Let's say you're on the sidewalk and you need to kick it up to Turbo S, maybe because you're going across a dark alley or something and you need extra light, and then you want to kick it back down to medium, but it just goes to low. If you're walking around, low is probably fine, But if you need that extra light, then you're going to have to manually kick it up. So that's an extra step, but it would have been nice if they programmed it to go back to a memorized mode. And of course you can get to strobe with a triple click, and then a single click will turn that off. Or you can go into strobe and hold it, and that'll bring you to a memorized mode. So let's say you're on high, triple click, hold it, you go back to high. So it would have been nice if they made turbo the same way, but they didn't. But other than that, the operation is pretty simple. Simple click on, simple click off. And double click to get to turbo or turbo S. And then single click off. So the modes are pretty simple in this thing, but very effective. There's a 3-minute turbo timer, it seems, to go from turbo S back to turbo, or a 7-minute turbo timer to go back to high. I put it under water to see if I can keep it cool, but it still dropped down from turbo S to turbo, so it must be a turbo timer or something. And then of course, if you hold it for 3 seconds, it'll lock out. So now when you click the button in lockout mode, it warns you that it's locked out. And then to get out of lockout mode, you hold it for over 2 seconds. So it blinks, and then now you're in moonlight mode, and you can go to low, medium, whatever. So there's all the modes. I think it's pretty simple the way it operates, and it also has some pretty good features in there if you need them. And I guess it's not a mode, but that proximity sensor is pretty handy. It reflects the light back at itself and reduces so it doesn't burn whatever is in front of it. And it should last about 30 days, they say. According to my calculations, since it runs at 15 lumens and the batteries are 3000 milliamp hours, I'd say it would last about 23 days. Since it has 4 batteries in there, you can run it on low, which gives you 700 lumens, and get about 10 to 14 hours with it. You can even run it on medium or high, you still get 1000 to 5000 lumens, and it'll last at least 3 hours on that. Turbo and Turbo S mode only last for 3 to 7 minutes, so don't even bother using that for any extended period of time. Those are just for spot checks or quick searches. But being as big as it is, you can walk around and put out 3000 lumens continuous, no problem. And then once the temperature regulation kicks in, it'll drop to about 2400 lumens. And then it'll keep that up for at least 3 hours, or 211 minutes. And then it'll drop off and just turn off. And as you can see, its temperature regulation is very constant. It ranges between 51 degrees Celsius and 49 degrees Celsius, or around 122 degrees Fahrenheit. Water resistance on this thing is not bad. If it's IPX7, you can keep it in the water for a duration of 30 minutes, down to a depth of 1 meter. So the flashlight passed the water test with flying colors. No water got in, nothing got damaged. I opened it up and not a bit of water got in. This is truly an IP7X, and it can be submerged to a meter probably no problem. I put it inside a bucket of water and turned it on, and then let it cool down in that bucket. So if it was going to suck in any water, it would have sucked it in. But the most interesting part of this test was that I measured the lumen output through the bucket. So it's not perfect, but it allowed us to see that by cooling it with water, it was able to maintain output of over 16,000 lumens up to about 3 minutes. And I think it's programming that tells it to drop down after a certain amount of time to the next mode, or it's voltage based. So if it's not pushing out enough voltage, the boost driver doesn't try to boost it up, and it drops down the current being output. So it's no longer being thermally regulated, it's more being limited by the voltage of the batteries, which is pretty interesting to see. Drops down to 13,000 lumens at about 3 minutes, and then is able to keep that up to about 7 minutes, where it's still putting out 13,000 lumens, and then it drops down to 9,700 lumens, which is way better than if it had gotten hot. When it was hot at 7 minutes, it only could put out 3,800 lumens. So in the winter, you're going to get a lot better output out of this thing, but you're still going to be limited by the voltage of those batteries. A couple hundred watts is a lot to be pushing out of a flashlight this size, and with small 18650s in there. So that was the most interesting part of the water test, was to see that the lumen output could be sustained while it was being water cooled. When it's being free air cooled, you can't do very well. So if you're using it normally, it's going to be limited by the advanced temperature regulation. It has an impact resistance of 1 meter. I'm usually not very rough on my flashlights, but this one's for work, so it gets thrown around in the pickup truck or dropped on the ground quite a bit. I've been pretty happy with it. This thing's still working, like the day I bought it. I'm very impressed by Olight, and the quality of their product is very impressive. If you look at the sizing, it sits right up there with the Skyray King. But if you throw the weights on there, you can see that it's much heavier than the Skyray King. It's basically as heavy as the Convoy L6, which is a much larger light. Olight has done something kind of really cool with the LEDs. They put it on a high quality MC PCB board made of copper so it can dissipate heat easily, and it has a direct thermal path so they can run those XHP 70s really hot, and that's how you get 17,000 lumens and drive those LEDs really hard without burning them out. They put them in series and they're soldered for 6-volt operation, so that's 18 volts going to them. So there's 2 batteries, about 8 volts, and they're taking that and boosting it up to 18 volts. So this driver is a proprietary boost driver, and it's throwing 200 watts at those LEDs, which is pretty impressive. It doesn't flicker, and it produces a nice DC voltage. So this light has a high quality boost driver in there. They specify it's a cool white color temperature, and I've compared it to my other lights, and it sits in there around 5,500, which is kind of a cool white, but not too blue. In addition to that holster, it also comes with a good USB-C cable, and it's pretty long. I think it's about 1 meter. And it also comes with a USB charger that pushes out 5 volts 4 amps. Here's a quick beam shot.
It makes a very good walking light because it has a nice big beam, wide distribution. It throws light right off to the sides, like almost 180 degrees. You can change the mode to what you need, so you obviously don't need high. You can just walk around on low, and that's not a problem. It lights everything up in low. Kick it up to medium if you like, but definitely don't recommend turbo or turbo S because that will blind everything. It'll blind you, everyone around you, and nobody wants that. It's the Convoy C8 Plus with the SST. Not a good walking light at all because look at it. It blinds you no matter what. Even on 50%, it's blinding you. So this is not a very good walking light, but like all lights you can use it. It's just not ideal. So here we've got the L6. As you can see, it's only 1/3 of the lumens, so it can only light up a small portion and still throw the same distance. The Marauder lights up like 3 times that area. So here's the Marauder, and here's the L6. You can see a huge difference there. This thing lights up everything. And we've got the exposure lock, so you can see the difference there. This one is only 1/3 of the amount of light as the Marauder. This thing is insane. So if you want something that's smaller than the L6, but a lot brighter and has thermal control, active thermal control, the Marauder's the way to go. Like, look at that. The size difference is insane. You can see how much more light the Marauder is pushing out there. This distribution is a little wider, as you can see, but it still throws quite a distance. Maybe a little bit less than the L6. But look at that. Look at the difference there. This one's beam angle's a lot bigger than this one. But with all that extra light, it doesn't really need that tight beam. This one's tiny, it can fit in that little side pouch. This one you can't really carry around. So if you want something that's easy to carry around and 3 times more powerful than the L6, the Marauder is the way to go. Look at that thing. It's crazy. It's starting to get hot, so it's probably going to reduce its output pretty soon.
I think they've done a good job with that orange peel reflector and the 3 domed XHP 70 LEDs. 21 degrees is a nice wide beam, and 110 degrees is a very wide peripheral angle, which is great because you'll see rocks before you go and trip on them. So if you go hiking a lot, this is a good light for that. So as you saw in the trail, it lights it up very well. It doesn't blind you when you shoot yourself right in front because it throws so much light out into the field angle and peripheral angles. If there are any bears or cougars hiding in the bushes, you'll definitely see them with a peripheral light. I wouldn't say it performs extremely well at the farm, but it definitely lights up a great portion of it. So if you're looking for somebody in there running around, you can easily spot them. And that's what I mean when I say you have the power of the sun in your hand. You can see the entire field, and if you're looking for some equipment you left behind, you can easily go out there and grab it. It doesn't feel like it's nighttime at all when you turn this thing on. And I've taken this thing apart to check inside, and it's definitely high quality. They've thought things through and they've used a metal cover for your USB port, and you can twist that open and close thousands of times and it will not wear out. I think that metal piece is structural, so that if you drop the batteries, all the force bounces into that metal and doesn't allow the circuit board to get cracked. So that's what I mean that this thing is impact resistant, and they've thought of everything. And they've made a light that you can handle roughly and it won't break on you. So if you think this is a high price to pay, and you want to pay 150 bucks instead of 280 for a cheaper light, I wouldn't bother because you're going to get something that you drop once and it cracks the circuit board. because they haven't put this extra thought into it. And if you take the front off, the stainless steel bezel just unscrews. You'll see a nice thick glass, a nice thick silicone gasket, and a really nice reflector. They used a lot of thermal paste on that MCPCB board, and it's made of thick copper. You can see the photo sensor there. It just detects light that bounces back at it. So if you do use it in the daytime, it will detect that light and reduce the output. So it's just a light sensor. It's not an infrared distance sensor or anything. One problem with that is if your bag is matte black, it'll absorb that light and the photosensor won't see enough light to reduce the output, and then you're going to burn a hole through your bag still. So it's not a fail-proof sensor, but it's better to have that than nothing at all. When you put this thing back together, you'll want to use some clear UV glue or on the Phillips screws, and then use your Convoy UV light to set that, and that'll maintain the IPX7 water resistance. If you don't have a UV light or glue, then just use some silicone, should be good enough. Since there's that DC to DC boost driver, pulse width modulation frequency is very low. Percent flicker is only 10%, and the flicker index is 0.0. You'll see no flicker in there, and you can use it as a high-speed video light if you want to. It has low battery protection to protect those cells, since they're unprotected cells, and the side switch will flash red for a while, and then it'll turn the light off. Once it turns off, you can turn it back on, which is nice, because sometimes you could be out hiking, and you just don't want the light to turn off on you. So you can keep forcefully turning the light back on, just leave it on moonlight or low, and then it'll turn off again, but you can keep turning it back on if you need to kill the batteries to get home. So that's the proper way to do it. Some lights turn off the light for low battery protection, and then they don't let you turn it back on again, which is pretty stupid, because if you want to destroy your batteries to get down the trail, you should be able to do that. So this light is the proper light for hiking or any work activities, where you don't care about the batteries, but you care more about the work. It's not very customizable because of that DC to DC boost driver and that charge port, but you can replace the batteries and the LEDs if you want. If you want to change it to a warm white color temperature, you can order 3 XHP 70.2 LEDs from AliExpress or the internet, and then you can just heat up that MCPCB board and reflow some new LEDs on there. You've seen on those graphs that the thermal management is very good, and if we take a look right at the first 15 minutes, you can see that as the temperature increases, it just plateaus at 51 degrees Celsius, while the light gently reduces down to 3000 lumens. So this is pretty good programming, and they have a great driver in there that can reduce the light output gently. It's a very safe light because it doesn't go much above 50 degrees Celsius. $280 US, but if you consider that the batteries come with it and you don't need a charger, and that it comes with a holster, a 4 amp charger, and that cable, then it starts to look like a pretty good deal. Because if you buy a $150 light, after the charger, battery, holster, and shipping of all those parts, it's going to be over 200 bucks. So just pay a little bit more and then get yourself a very high quality light. My previous favorite high output light was the DQG, but that one doesn't have enough safety features for me to feel comfortable lending it to someone at work or using it every day for hikes and going to work. This definitely has the quality and the features that you want in a serious light. If you're looking for the Cadillac of lights to take on walks or go to work with, I highly recommend considering the X7R Marauder. I've been using my Skyray King, but just taking the batteries out, putting it in a charger, and then taking the batteries out of the charger and putting it back in the charger was kind of a pain. And if you do that every time you come back to the office and leave the office, and you do that multiple times a day, it can get pretty annoying. Having that USB port is just way more convenient. Now I'm going to go on to the next 3 pages of comparisons. I'm going to go through them pretty quickly, but just pause it and take a closer look if you want. There's a lot of data on this table, and I couldn't really make it any bigger, so if you're not watching this on a computer, it's going to be kind of difficult to see. If we compare the lumen output of these different lights, you'll see that the X7R is just way up there. It just towers above all the other lights that I have. Convoy L6 is a very powerful light as well, and it does light up the field quite nicely in comparison to the X7R Marauder. All that extra lumen output from the Marauder is because it's throwing light way out to the sides. That's where all the light's going. It's not going straight down the middle like the L6 can do because of its huge reflector. It takes way more power and way more light if you're going to try to light up the entire area. A lot of the light is actually going up into the sky if you're pointing it straight ahead, so you're losing a lot of light there. The Xanflare F1 runs for 61 days on its moonlight mode, but it doesn't put out much light. You can barely use that to read a book. The Marauder, on the other hand, can last for about 22 days, and it is putting out enough light for you to use. And because it has so many batteries in there, it outlasts every other light on this list, except the F1. So I've organized this from the most narrow beam at the top to the most wide beam at the bottom. The X7R is sitting very close to the bottom because it's a very wide beam. It's very similar to my DQG. I think that's my favorite beam shot and beam distribution. This table shows those numbers graphically, and you can see the X7R is right there between the S2 Plus and DQG, which are great utility lights and can be used for walking on the sidewalk, working on the car, walking in trails, basically everything. It's like a universal distribution. It's not a thrower and not a flutter. In comparing the throw distance, it sits up there with the Skyray King and the C8, which is not amazing, but for being such a wide light, 330 meters is pretty good. Having an intensity that's similar to the C8 is pretty impressive. It's only 3000 lux short. The C8 is a very crazy hotspot too, so having a beam like that is pretty impressive. If you look at the beam intensity profile with all the other lights on it, you can see that it can't catch up to the throwers, but what it's doing is throwing a lot of the light into the field angle and peripheral angle. If we look at the logarithmic graph, you can see the peripheral angle a lot better, and that's where all of its light's going. It takes a lot of lumens and power to fill that area up. And what that results in is the ability to light up the entire field of view, almost like it's daytime. So if you're walking down a trail, double click this thing twice, and you got nothing to be afraid of. Any cougars or bears out there, they should be scared off. I don't want to test it, but I'm guessing if this thing blinds them, they'll go running off the other direction. For this comparison, I have the X7R Marauder in the middle and a bunch of flashlights surrounding it so you can directly compare them. The exposure has been locked, so you can easily see which one's brighter in the center and in the peripheral. The L6 comes closest to the brightness of the X7R, but it's still about a third the lumen output. The Marauder is basically pushing out 12,000 lumens by the time I've got this picture taken. So you can clearly see it's much brighter than the rest. This comparison is good for showing you that the peripheral light of the X7R cannot be matched by anything else. This is what it looks like to the naked eye, and it does kind of hurt your eyes. It is very bright. You don't need Turbo S when you're walking down a small trail like this. But if you want to light up all the nook and crannies like this little spot here, something could be hiding. All the other flashlights won't really be able to see into this little dark area. It's like daylight. I know I keep saying it's like daylight, but that's what I mean. It lights up every nook and cranny in front of you. So the L6 can't light it up. The DQG does a little bit better of a job because it's not much of a thrower, and the C8 has no chance of lighting that up because it's got a D-domed LED on there and it's meant for just throwing light straight down the middle. Now I'm going to zoom in each of them right to the bridge so you can see how well each of them throws. So you can see the best performer here is the L6 and C8. They're pretty comparable, but the C8 is a little bit more focused and the L6 has enough horsepower to light up the entire bridge. The DQG and the Skyray King have very high output at 3000 and 4000 lumens, so it can light it up pretty well. But then the S1R, On the Road, and S2 are just utility lights and they can't really throw. So it starts to become pretty dim out there. And surprisingly, the F1 is a pretty good thrower for being such a small light. I think it's because they have a smooth reflector and a pretty small LED, the XPO. And it almost has 1200 lumens, so that's pretty good. The X7R is not as good of a thrower as the L6, but I'd say it's about 80% there. I've replaced the right three pictures with the UT01, Elfin, and Budget Lightform 348, just to show you how the smaller lights compare. The UT01 and the Elfin are about as good as the S2 Plus. It's interesting to see that the UT01 and the Elfin are still capable of lighting up that bridge, so you can kind of make out that there's a bridge over there, but you can't make out the rails, or if someone was standing there you wouldn't be able to see them. And if you only have 200 lumens, the 348, it doesn't light anything up. It'll be just complete darkness. So as a walking light, I'd recommend something like the S2 Plus, but if you go on a lot of night walks and you don't know what you're going to come across, bears, cougars, crazy dogs, then I definitely recommend something like the X7R or the Convoy L6. They both make great lights for walking. Anything with less output would be a compromise. When you're out there in the dark, you definitely want to have that extra power to light everything up.
The head's starting to get a little warm, but that's just the nature of a super crazy powerful light. And when you turn it off, it has a slow gradual decrease in lumen output. Pretty cool.
All the other flashlights I have weights with and without batteries, but since you can't take the batteries out of this thing, the only weight it has is 670 grams. And just to reiterate, it is a very heavy flashlight. Even on the holster, you're not going to be able to run very fast with that thing. It's a very heavy light and it'll keep smacking you on the side. Might even bruise you. It's about the size of a soda can, so if you're interested in buying this light, take a soda can, put it in your pocket, or hold the soda can and pretend it's a flashlight. If you're okay holding something like that, then you'll like this. The price of this flashlight, in comparison to the rest, looks ridiculous. But when you throw the lumen output on there, it makes sense because the lumen output is right up there with the price. It's kind of like buying a car. If you want the high horsepower car, then you have to pay a lot more. And then if we look at the dollar for lumen, it's actually right down there with the Convoy C8. It's only 1.6 cents per lumen, which is actually equivalent to the S2 Plus. So it's kind of like RAM or hard drives. You're paying for the gigabytes. But I think because of the high build quality and all the safety features and the good engineering, that this flashlight is worth every penny of that 280 bucks. This is a good flashlight to keep by your bedside. If you hear noises in the back or bears always eat your garbage, you can go out there, double click it, it'll light up the entire backyard and they'll take off. So to conclude, if you want a soda can side switch light that has good stability while tail standing, so you can light up an entire room or pick it up and light up an entire farm and use it as a searchlight, then this is insane light for you. Initially, I actually thought it was 4 to 5 stars for value for the dollar, but upon reviewing this in more detail and using it every day, I've come to the conclusion that it's 5 out of 5 stars. Most of the Android phones use USB-C chargers now, so you've got it in your car, at your office, at home. So this is a very convenient light. And for that, I'm going to say that this is a highly recommended light. It is insane. Also, I wanted to mention that the battery technology they selected is very good. The N in INR stands for nickel, and that means it's a lithium manganese nickel cell instead of just regular lithium manganese oxide. The addition of nickel makes it more stable. It can put out more current, get hotter, and it won't risk thermal runaway or exploding like laptop batteries have been doing. So it can handle a little more heat, more overcharging, and its risk of explosion is a lot less. So a lot of engineering and selection of materials and components have gone into this flashlight. I think they've done a really good job, and they have a reliable, safe light here. Thanks for watching, and I hope that helps.
Oh yeah, look at that. 12,000 lumens. This thing's gonna be nuts. Let's see. Oh yeah, look at that. Comes with a little ribbon to help you pop it open. Lanyard holder that can be hidden away. Got a protective thing on the front lens so you don't scratch it. Comes with a little user manual, which we'll probably have to look at because it has a lot of options. That's a pretty nice belt holster. So let's see how it fits in there. Oh yeah, that fits nice. It also has a little lanyard holder. Comes with a USB-C charging cable. Comes with that lanyard, super long one so that you can hold it over your shoulder. It comes with a nice wall charger. 5 volts, 4 amps. That's pretty significant. Doesn't look like there's anything else in here. Let's bring it inside and open this thing up. We'll have to keep in mind that these 2 positive sides stay on this side, and the 2 negative sides are towards the button side on this side. There's actually markings down here. So if you want to replace the cells, it's pretty easy. You just have to solder a 2-cell pack in parallel, and then do the positive on this side, and the negative facing down on that side, just like it shows. They have to be offset like this, so that it can slide down like that. If they're on this side, it won't slide down. So the tabs have to be towards the middle. So it's sort of special, the packs, but it's not too bad. So you can replace these cells if you want to. It's just about 6 screws and 3 Allen keys to open up. So these are the Samsung INR 18650s-30Qs. Let's put it back together now and test it out.
front can be taken off and you can cover up the sensor if you want to disable that. I'll show you quickly how to do that. Just get something that's rubber, twist it to the front, that will undo the ring. Then you can take the ring off. The lens and the reflector come off. Here's the reflector. And 3 nice orange peel reflectors. And you see they've gone to the extra detail of getting that silicone to wrap around the glass lens to both sides. So that keeps all the water out, and that's how it gets its IP rating. Look at that. That is attention to detail right there. That's what you're paying for. That's what costs you the extra money. That's why I think this thing is worth every penny. Here's the look inside. They've got 3 machine screws holding it down, a bunch of wires for the LEDs, and the mode switch coming out the front. It's because the mode switch is so far forward, allowing you to get your thumb onto it. That's why they had to put the button wires out front. So these guys have gone that extra mile to push that button forward far enough for you to touch and to push the LEDs back. That's why the button wires have to come out the front in front of the LED board. That's copper right there. That's how they get all the heat away from these LEDs into the body. It looks like they've got some thermal paste in there, white thermal paste. Heat gets pushed into this built-in shelf, and then the heat runs into all these heat sinks. So that is a well-made light right there. Put your little lanyard on there so you don't drop it. So if you want to disable that sensor for testing, you put a piece of black tape over top of it. Just make sure you remove that when you put it back together. Now we're going to try the burn test, where we try to fire it through some black plastic. This is just a garbage bag. So let's try high. Okay, the sensor did it a little bit too late there. Let's try turbo. Yeah, the sensor kicked in, but that was toast. Let's try turbo S. Okay, that's just ridiculous. Sensor kicked in, but then since it burned away the plastic, sensor turned off. So the burn test for a thin, light plastic bag is very poor, but obviously if you're in a backpack or something, it shouldn't be able to burn through that. So let's go grab something that's more of a backpack. Okay, so here's a pretty thick but still kind of disposable plastic bag for carrying groceries. Let's try just high, because that's what you're going to accidentally click on within your bag. So let's say you're carrying it in the bag, it's pushed down by accident. Will it melt through, or will the automatic sensor reduce? It looks like the sensor's not going to work at all. Because it's a black bag, it's not reflecting enough light for the sensor to notice something's in front of it. It's just a light sensor, and that's the problem. So if your bag is black and it accidentally gets turned on in there, you're gonna get a couple holes in there. However, if it's something that's bright, let's say the inside of your bag has something else in it and it's up against it, turns on, it should reduce itself down pretty quickly. There you go. So if it's in your bag and there's nothing black in front of it, it should be able to use the photo sensor, light sensor, as a proximity sensor. Otherwise, black objects will not reflect enough light back into that photo sensor. And then once you remove that obstruction, you should kick it back up into high. There you go. So the sensor is on one side, it's at the top here. So that's why when I remove it like this, it doesn't see any more light. So the sensor is a good feature. It's good to have on there. It does make you feel a little bit more safe, but as you can see, black objects absorb the light and do not allow the photo sensor to do its job. So make sure you use the lockout just by holding that for over 3 seconds. And now anytime it's in your bag, it won't accidentally get turned on. So as you can see, this flashlight has been used quite a bit in the field. It's very dirty, there's crud all inside the heat sinks. Good thing is it's waterproof, so you can just rinse it under the water and it's good as new. And there you go, good as new. So this is a very good flashlight to be used at work. It's reliable, you can't have it fail on you. You don't want to be carrying a Skyray King and have it fail on you. That's the last place you want it to fail. So good as new. There's no scratching on the lens, so it's a good quality lens. Everything else is scratched, but they've recessed that enough so that you don't scratch or damage this lens. It's very thick, so even if you shatter it, it's going to keep on working. Here you can see I've dropped it a whole bunch, and there's a lot of anodization has been worn off, scratched on the corners. Other than that though, it is in pretty good condition. So you can expect this thing to work in heavy duty conditions. You can drop it, probably not too much if you drop it on this little break, but it's very thick, as you can see when I tore it down. Alright, opened it up, put the piece of tape over the sensor again. I brought it to work, so I took that tape off it, made it a little more safe until the temperature or the turbo timer kicks in, which is 3 minutes at Turbo S. So right now we're reading 111,600 lux. And slowly dropping as the battery voltage decreases. It's basically pushing 200 watts out of those Samsung 30Qs. So still at 110,000